Is Bitcoin finally ready for the parabolic phase in its market cycle? Let's dive right into it. Subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in the future. Like this video if you enjoy content like this going forward. And let's dive right into it. So Bitcoin is forming this downtrending channel on the weekly time frame. And over the past 3 weeks, actually 4 weeks now, we were deviating below the channel, trying to find a support in order to enable price expansion above the bottom of this channel, and we're seeing a fantastic recovery here. And if you look at recent previous channel bottom rebounds, whether after deviations or not, you can see that it takes price from the channel bottom to the channel top. It can take 1-2 weeks, right? If we go back down to the channel and then back up to it, it takes 2 weeks as well. So here as well, 1 week, 2 weeks, and then maybe 4 weeks holding here in total. So a 4-week uptrend really from the bottom to the top. It takes 2 weeks on average, 4 weeks at most, where most of this was actually just consolidating at the highs. Here again, 2 to 3 weeks of price action going up towards the upside, and this is the first week. So at soonest next week, we'll be back at 67K with potential for upside wicking beyond this channel top. And for Bitcoin to really be ready for a breakout to new highs in a sustainable fashion, because these upside wicks are unsustainable price action, it is representing an extreme price action, so the extremities of price action where FOMO buyers are FOMOing in here, but the sell pressure is just too strong. So for price to really be ready to break out to much higher levels than just this channel top at 67, 68K, it would need to weekly candle close above here. And once we get a weekly candle close for the first time in the entire life cycle of this weekly channel, weekly close beyond here would be fantastic. It would be bullish. It would mean that we're ending this series of lower highs, which is representing the channel top. But a weekly close beyond here wouldn't be sufficient, and I'll tell you about that in just a moment, because first of all we have to understand why this channel bottom is so important. And the fact is that it represents the old all-time high resistance, which is now acting as a new all-time high support for the past 6 months. And on the monthly time frame, this is even better shown, because this was a point of rejection, this was a point of rejection, and for the past 6 months we've been holding here, really holding nicely here, but of course producing those downside wicks as part of volatile retesting of this old resistance into new support. And that's phenomenal to see, because this is definitely not only a crucial support, but a very strong one at the same time. And once we break out from that weekly channel, you can notice that there will be another resistance that's going to be the absolute boss. It will be the final boss that Bitcoin needs to break, and that's 71K. This range high resistance of the overall reaccumulation range that we tend to see historically across time around the halving event, and especially after the halving event. We've seen it in 2020, we've seen it in 2016, and we're seeing it now in 2024. We tend to see sideways price action for multiple months, and we tend to also produce downside deviation moments via downside wicks. For the most part, we've seen that a lot throughout the cycle, but in this reaccumulation range we've seen downside wicking and even downside deviations via candle bodied candles here. So a weekly close above 60,600, that's going to register the fact that this reaccumulation range low has been reclaimed as support, especially if we are to dip into the bottom of that reaccumulation range low, retest it successfully, and then enable a move towards the upside. That can also be a possibility, but a weekly close above 60,600, that's going to end this downside deviation bargain buying period and solidify Bitcoin's return into the range. And for price to rally towards the top of this reaccumulation range, it will need to simply break the channel top here. It will need to break this series of lower highs that's been persisting since March, mid-March of this year. That's why we need a weekly candle close above here to give us credence and strength that this sell side pressure at this channel top here at these lower highs is dissipating and the bulls are regaining control. Weekly close above 67,700, and we will manage to break to the reaccumulation range high of 71,000. And of course, before then, we need to simply weekly close above the channel bottom, which is 58,700, which is pretty much really well positioned for a weekly close like that. At least it needs to close above 61,500 to further solidify this ascent across the channel. So we need a few key weekly closes, and Bitcoin is really well positioned for that. For me, I just like price to weekly close above 60,600 because that's going to position price for a consolidation across the range and across the channel, of course. But are we ready for this parabolic phase in the cycle? Of course, the answer is that we need to continue solidifying a base at the bottom of this reaccumulation range low, solidifying it as a base, retesting it as support, solidifying those weekly closes above 60,600 to position us for a price move across the range and also across this channel. And to do that, we need to get these weekly closes in the books. And after doing so, we'd need to break those lower highs, of course, as we spoke about, and then revisit these reaccumulation range highs. And that's when we'll need a weekly close above here, 71.5K, so $71,500. That's what we need to weekly close above, because as you can see here, upside wicking. If we zoom in here, upside wicking and upside wicks into the top of that reaccumulation range. Even here, maybe short, falling a bit short, but weekly closing above this red reaccumulation range high of 71,500 would be sufficient to enable a breakout into a parabolic rally for Bitcoin to new all-time highs and into price discovery. The question is, however, is it time for that? And historically speaking, we tend to break out 150 days after the halving. That is exactly what 2016 is suggesting, because it took 150 days for Bitcoin to break out from its 2016 post-halving reaccumulation range. And 2020, for example, well, we saw a 160-day breakout after the halving. So 2020 is suggesting 160 days. 2016 is suggesting 150 days, roughly speaking. So anything between 150, 160 days is when we should be breaking out. And that is a month away, roughly speaking. So we need to gain ground within this range, and we have a whole month to do that. And if we see price action appreciate very quickly to the top of this channel, and we still have a month, 20 days until the historically recurring moment for a breakout from the reaccumulation range is occurring, then maybe we have a time for another rejection from this channel bottom. It really depends. How quickly will Bitcoin's price action go towards the upside? But the really important thing here is that we're currently in the process of potentially reclaiming the 21-week exponential moving average. This is a bull market EMA, and the fact that we lose it sometimes and sometimes reclaim it, well, that is simply what happens with EMAs. We oscillate around them, below them, above them. Whenever we deviate below them in bull markets, those tend to represent fantastic bargain buying opportunities. And we can see that not only from of course, this period in the market, but also this period where we deviated below that 21-week EMA, that bull market EMA. We downside wicked below it here briefly, downside wicked below it briefly here as well. And of course, we were here in a bear market. So downside deviations over the bull trend below the 21-week EMA, those are fantastic bargain buying opportunities. And that simply is the case even in this 2021 cycle where we deviated below the green 21-week moving average. And that was a fantastic bargain buying opportunity. And also here as well, I understand that 500 days after the halving is when we tend to lose this 21-week moving average for a long time to enter a bear market. So that's a thing to mention, that once we're 500 days after the halving and lose the green moving average, the 21-week EMA, that is dangerous territory, because that's probably going to be entering a bear trend. And we're nowhere close to 500 days after the halving. We are only 133 30 days after the halving. So we still have a tremendous amount of time because we haven't even entered the post-halving parabolic upside phase yet. We're still finishing up the post-halving reaccumulation phase, and we still have a month for that to continue, for that consolidation to continue. So there is still time before we break out. Late September is when this breakout is scheduled, according to historical price tendencies, where Bitcoin tends to break out 160 days after the halving or 150 days or so after the halving. So those are really things to watch out going forward. Is Bitcoin ready for a parabolic upside in its cycle right now? No, it's not quite yet ready, but it's really paving the way, setting the right things in action and in motion to really prepare itself for that breakout in the future. It just needs to solidify this range low as support. It will do that in the next few days. It will need to break these lower highs in the future, and depending on when that happens, we'll know whether we have one last rejection left in the tank for Bitcoin. And then of course it needs to revisit the reaccumulation range high and weekly close above $71,500 for Bitcoin. It has a few hurdles still to jump through, but we're now getting in the clear, finishing up this bargain buying downside deviation zone and getting in the clear to resynchronizing with this range, and also getting very close to resynchronizing with traditional halving cycles, because we know that we were slightly accelerating in this cycle, and this consolidation period has reduced that rate of acceleration by a considerable amount. I talk about that in this video, in the previous video, so check it out. But in any case, that's about it for today's video. Subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in the future. Like this video if you enjoy content like this going forward. I'm Rekt Capital, and I'll speak to you in the next one. Speak to you soon.